we'd like to welcome you back to the Mike and Bradley sports scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative Channel 18, also being simulcast here on WAT AM 1110, Pikeville, Tennessee. I'm Mike Smith, and with me once again is Bradley Hargis. And of course, we're going to discuss sports such as basketball, football, and various other sports that may be of interest for this time of the year. First off, let's go up with the Bledsoe County sports. The football season may be over. And unfortunately for Bledsoe County, didn't make it to the state championship game. Neither did York Institute, as they lost to East Robertson in the fourth round. But congratulations to York for the great season that they had. They finished 13-1. Alcoa won the Class 3A state championship. Congratulations to Hubert Robertson and his team for winning. That's their 9th straight, breaking the old record of 8 straight by Alcoa. You get there, so that could be a dynasty in the works there. In fact, probably is.
It's done beyond the dynasty. I think Alcoa could probably beat the Titans right now. But that's beside the point. But Alcoa has always been really, really good.
South Pittsburgh won their 8th state championship in school history. They beat Kinsey 14-7 in the tryouts, which were all played at Chattanooga. However, Gary Rankin's Boy Buchanan team fell short, losing in the Division II state championship. Gary Rankin, of course, was the head coach at Alcoa for many years and established that great dynasty there. So the football, the football season is finished. Well, they're all up there. 9 Warriors got named to the all-region team, and of course, would be Zach Brugner. He's lineman of the year in Class 2 in Region 2-2A, lineman of the year. He finished the season as a defensive lineman with 49.5 tackles, 23 tackles for a loss, 9 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception. An offensive lineman, Brugner was a key player in opening holes in his opponent's line, protecting the quarterback. Joining him on the 2A AA football team was seniors Jace Raines, Sam Agee, I said his name right, Sam Agee, and Nathan Sandell. Juniors Jonathan Thomas, Damon Robeck, Jake Agee, and Austin Kane. Bayless Robertson was named all academic recognition. Congratulations to those very fine young men. And of course, season stats. 13 weeks of graduate play. Austin Raines, 146 carries for 983 yards, short of the 1,000-yard mark. I don't think we ever had a Bledsoe player that got 1,000 yards in a season. He came close. Congratulations to him. And he had 8 touchdowns, 8 catches for 27 yards. Dallas Bridges, 49 carries for 368 yards for 4 TDs, 9 catches for 83 yards. Sam Agee, 124 carries for 634 yards, 8 TDs. That's a lot of offense, Bradley.
It is. It really is.
And Zane Walker, 58 carries for 433 yards, 4 TDs, 2 catches for 33 yards. And, of course, Jonathan Thomas, 71 carries for 325 yards, 4 TDs, 51 of 107 for 807 yards passing. That's amazing statistics. That tells you how powerful Bledsoe has built itself as a team.
Well, you see there in the names that you mentioned, it's not just one player. You see a wealth of people, and it's what we talked about several times on the broadcast and as well as here on this show, is the wealth of talent we have coming out of the backfield with Walker and Raines and Agee and Melton, and even with Jonathan Thomas, he's got some wheels too. And the fact that we spread that around, it keeps the defense guessing, really, because you don't really know what's going to happen, especially if you got 2 that are very close to 1,000-yard rushers in your backfield at the same time. Who's going to get the ball? And the fakes right and left and stuff like that really throw defense off. So, and we've played a lot of Justin Milton, who was a freshman.
He had 50 carries for 422 yards.
Yeah. So your Coach Tabor is really building for the future. At the same time, building a powerhouse program currently.
Yeah.
He's looking ahead, and that's what you got to do. He's not just going season by season. He's looking ahead and trying to build something bigger and better, and he's doing a fine job at that.
He's getting the freshmen and sophomores lots of playing time. Of course, Justin Melton, as I said, 50 carries for 422 yards, 5 TDs, 9 catches for 345 yards, and 7 TDs. So that's good numbers. And of course, you've got defense on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, you have a lot of things for defense. Nathan Sandell had 78 tackles 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Stonewall Farmer, 71.5 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble. Damon Roback, 44.5 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 1 fumble recovery. Austin Raines, 42 tackles, 1 fumble recovery. Jonathan Thomas, 37.5 tackles, 6 for loss, 3 sacks, 1 interception, 1 interception return for a TD. And I got all these figures. We could stand all day calling these guys out, but there's just so many. But to all of them were ones we mentioned and the ones we did not. Congratulations! You've shown how much of a team that you wanted to be, and he has proved up well. And you got 42 wins in 5 seasons. That's a record for a Bledsoe team. Every season has been a winning season. You have not been shot at in any of those games, and we came close on a couple of times to actually going further into the playoffs than we ever have before. And that tells you how it is. And obviously, to these things, 9-3, kudos to the Bledsoe County Warrior football team. I know they went to the parade this Saturday and throwing candy out, a few passes here and there. Mm-hmm. And congratulations to the Bledsoe County Warriors. Now, basketball season is here, and some good news for the Bledsoe County men's team. They're undefeated at 5-0. They won over Grundy County 73-70. They've won some tight games. There's not been blowouts, but they've been tight games, and a lot of things. Unfortunately, the women have not won a game as of yet. But
that game last night against Grundy County, it went into overtime, and that was a really good game last night. We sat there and watched that, and I mean, it was. The crowd was in it, obviously on both sides, because you don't play Grundy County without the crowd being in it. And it's even worse at Grundy County. Yeah. But that's nothing against the Grundy County fans. I mean, that's great. If you have if you're passionate about your sports team, that's great. But yeah, when you've got 2 passionate fan bases that are screaming and yelling at not just the coaches and the referees, but at one another, you've got yourself a pretty interesting atmosphere nonetheless.
Usually that would be for the Sequatchie County games, but this is a totally different bird. These are totally different birds. Of course, I've been up in Grundy County, and of course they have their unusual arrangement where the stands are in the end zones instead of the sidelines like they usually are, and of course that'll be a very interesting season for the Warriors and Lady Warriors here. Of course, the Warriors, will begin playing Friday night. They'll host district foe Marion County. And we're going to have the broadcast of that game here on WAT, by the way. And that'll be a start at 5:50 pregame and 6 o'clock tip-off for the Warriors here. Bradley, you've got some things you might want to add on here.
I was just looking ahead at the schedule here. Is December 8th. That is Friday night. We host a home game against Marion County. It's a region game. Yeah. And then on the 12th, we host a home game. That's Tyner. So that's the next 2 games coming up. Get out there and support your Warrior. That's a region game for us. Tyner, no doubt, will be a very major competition for the girls and for the boys.
Tyner always has good teams.
As well as, as you go through, even with our region this year, has Brainerd, Tyner,
CSAS.
Chattanooga School for Arts and Sciences. I mean, all of those teams are very, very good along the basketball front. So Bledsoe County is going to need your support to get out there and wear your blue and support the teams.
So that's going to be a very interesting game Friday night. We'll have the broadcast of that game here on WAT live, and I will, of course, be doing that with pregame at 5:50 and tip-off at 6 o'clock with the girls' team up first and then the boys' team as well. Okay, when we come back, we'll have the college football, the CFP, and the bowl schedule for the Tennessee Vols, and other SEC teams, as well as you're watching the Mike and Bradley Sports Scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative Channel 18.
You need a bank that you can depend on. Here at Citizens Tri-County Bank, we have the most dependable staff that you will ever meet. Call in, you will not get an automated attendant, you'll get a person. But on the other side, we have all the technology that anyone would need, from apps to online banking to bill pay. So please come and grow with us as we're about to celebrate our 50th year. We are the only community bank you will ever need.
Come and see the beautiful Sequatchie Valley. And while you're here, visit the Dunlap Mercantile. We have a full line of hats from Resistol, Stetson, Charlie One Horse, American Hat Makers, GG Pip, Greeley hats from the TV show Yellowstone, and a full line of vintage hats. Make sure to check out our hat bar where we can clean, shape, and customize a hat just for you, right here at the Dunlap Mercantile.
At Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter, we're committed to be better. Better prices, better vehicles, a better experience. Your Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter understands that you rely on us to provide you with the highest quality of used vehicles. With over 350 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. So what are you waiting for? Let us show you a better experience with the Jason Lewis Automotive family. Come visit us at Rankin Avenue here in Dunlap or on the web at dunlapsupercenter.com.
Okay, we're back. We want to thank Ethan, our cameraman and producer, for putting up with us for an hour for the past couple of months.
Good way to put it. Putting up with you.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, we're going to go to college football on the lighter side of things. Of course, the CFP field of 4 has been set, and with 3, you can probably agree with it wholeheartedly. There'll be Michigan number 1, Washington number 2. Number 3 is, I believe, Texas out of the Big 12, and they'll be SEC next year. And number 4 is where you're going to have the disagreement and the arguments go on, and that will be the Crimson Tide of Alabama, the SEC champion. They defeated number 1 Georgia 27-24, which I really thought was an interesting game because for the first time Georgia got in a position where they had to play catch-up and couldn't do it. And so as a result, Alabama finished number 4. Now, 2 teams on the outside is Florida State and Georgia. Florida State won the ACC. They were undefeated. They're 13-0. You know, they're supposedly, you think, well, they'd be locked to get in. Well, it didn't happen. And let me tell you the reason why. First off, Florida State apparently tailed off in the last few games. They had an injured quarterback. That was part of the reasoning, the selection committee's criteria. Player personnel, their quarterback is out for the year. They tailed off. Their strength of schedule was not very good. 55th, I believe, it was in one poll. While Alabama was 5th. Alabama got better after that loss to Texas, and actually got better toward the second half of the season, and that was that's the reason why the CFP committee chose Alabama over Florida State. Now, Florida State didn't like that too much, to put it mildly, and Roy Pankey, who I know very well, is a Seminole fan. And I can understand. My personally, if I was on the CFP committee, I would argue strongly for Florida State, because Florida State went to the season perfect, 13-0. Basically, you could not exactly say, hey, look, you can't knock somebody out. Now, what it was, the ACC actually did itself in. The ACC a few years ago, when they were proposing to go to 12 teams this year, said, no, you can't do that, and actually blocked that from happening to where it was next year. So in a way, the ACC sort of, cooked its own goose by doing that. Because if it had been 12 teams, Florida State certainly would be in, as well as Missouri and Georgia.
Well, you can't. You look at the strength of schedule argument, and let's be honest. I mean, if you're playing in the SEC, which Bama is obviously, and if you're playing in the SEC, your strength of schedule is already going to be higher than anybody else in the country.
Of course.
I mean, because it's the SEC, and I know people who are, fans of teams in the ACC and Big Ten and the Big 12 that are just hate the fact that people talk about the SEC because they say, well, all you really have is Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, and just a handful of teams. But our lower tier teams in the SEC would compete in any of those other conferences, So that's what people don't realize. And I'm all for the SEC being successful and winning, but I've got to go with you on that one, Mike. I think if you go through your season undefeated, lose your starting quarterback, and still win those games, even though they're closer, and beat a good quality Louisville team in the ACC championship without your starting quarterback. I mean, I honestly believe they should have made it in, because if you look, honestly, I think Texas should not have made it. I mean, yes, they beat Alabama.
They lost to Oklahoma.
But they lost to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is a lower ranked team right now.
Yeah.
So I honestly believe that Florida State should be playing Washington and Alabama because they won the SEC.
Yeah.
I think that them getting in, I'm okay with, but I'm not okay with Florida State being left out. I really think that's terrible. And whether they have their starting quarterback or not is irrelevant. They're perfect on the season, and they should be in there competing for that.
Now, what gets me is that they got the Rose Bowl playing Alabama and Texas. Now, you would think that the Rose Bowl would want one last time Pac-12 versus Big Ten, which would be Washington and Michigan. Okay, but that didn't happen. So they said, well, you're going to have to go. You have to go to Sugar Bowl, and of course Texas and Washington be playing in the Sugar Bowl.
Well, they did get half of that. They got the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl, Big Ten and SEC. And historically, SEC has always been a Sugar Bowl bid.
Right.
Now this college football playoff thing is coming up, so things are bounced around a little bit. And next year, when they bump it up, to 12 teams, it's going to be interesting to see how all this shakes out.
Absolutely. But of course, the bowls make selections based on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Okay, for example, Georgia is in the Orange Bowl. They're going to play Florida State. Okay, that's not a bad consolation prize considering. But how the Florida State may very well. Hey, okay, we got snubbed. We're going to play like it's a national championship game and play Georgia, which is a good quality team. Probably under most circumstances would have gotten in, but unfortunately did not. Of course, another team. Of course, the Gator Bowl. Everybody was saying Tennessee's going to go to the Gator Bowl to play North Carolina. Great matchup, border rivalry. Didn't happen. It turns out when Georgia lost, it changed things around. Tennessee got bumped up to the Citrus Bowl to play Iowa. Iowa won their SEC, won their Big Ten division, got shut out by Michigan, a better team, in the Big Ten championship game, and now they're going to play Tennessee, which Tennessee actually beat them like a rug the last time in the Gator Bowl. And, they beat them. So I don't know how that's going to go. That could be I think that matchup favors Tennessee.
Well, it's a win-win, really. I mean, the fact that Georgia lost, Tennessee, was able to bump up a little bit at the Citrus Bowl. North Carolina, was destined for the Gator Bowl as well. Them or NC State. And neither one of them went to the Gator Bowl. NC State went to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and they're playing Kansas State. North Carolina, they're just going down the road to Charlotte at the Duke's Mayo Bowl and playing West Virginia. In Tennessee,
they're going to play with Mickey Mouse.
We spent the last few seasons in Florida during bowl season.
No, January 1st bowl is not bad.
No, it's really not. And the only one that I am just completely bumfuzzled about of all the selections, your major bowls, have always been your Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl,
Rose
Bowl. And then, of course, you've had the Cotton Bowl and the Peach Bowl and even the Citrus Bowl. But your top four bowls, Oregon is playing in the Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix against Liberty.
Now, Liberty wasn't supposed to be in a bowl. Now, what happened was that there were a couple of slots that weren't filled in by 6-win teams. So they took Liberty and they took James Madison and put those in those slots, even though they told you can't go to a bowl. Now, that's of course, but if you are short, then we will take you. And because what it was is that Liberty was sort of in the break-in period, which where the NCAA says a probation period where you basically have to prove you're good enough to be in a bowl, to get into the bowl, and that sort of thing, and end up in a bowl. That's not a bad trip for Liberty. The Fiesta.
No, the Fiesta Bowl. You talk about the payout. They're going to have their budget met for the next 3 years. I mean,
it's like Bledsoe County being invited to play in the Super Bowl. You might lose to the Dallas Cowboys, but you'll have a good time going.
Yeah, it's going to be a good payout.
It'll be a good payout. It would make the budget for the next 10 years for Bledsoe County high school football. But of course, the other bowl teams involved in the SEC teams, Auburn is in the Music City Bowl. Mm-hmm. I don't remember who they're playing exactly. Maryland. That's not a bad matchup right there out of the Big Ten. That's a Big Ten SEC matchup. Of course, you got LSU in the Reliant Quest Bowl, and that is the old Outback Bowl. They're against Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Of course, Alabama's is in the Rose against Texas, I believe. Or is it Michigan?
They're playing Michigan.
Okay, it's Michigan. Sorry. Okay, yeah, that's right. Washington is playing Texas. Okay,
right.
So it's kind of hard to sometimes it gets a little confusing.
Well, the other opponent they were kicking around, Tennessee playing, had they been in the Gator Bowl, if it wasn't North Carolina or NC State, Clemson's name was also kicked around. Clemson's playing Kentucky.
Well, you see, what it was is they didn't want a rematch with that
in the Gator Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So
they there were some teams that were going to originally be matched up in a rematch from last year's bowl, but they switched it around so they wouldn't have that. I think that's sort of a way to hey, look, that sort of thing. And I don't think Clemson would have been that much of an opponent for Tennessee anyway, because they really fell down the chart a little bit. Anyway, and Texas A&M is in the Texas Bowl. Yeah, how fitting.
Really,
it should be. They always seem to take the SEC West. Of course, the Rose Bowl, we're not going to see a Pac-12 Big Ten matchup like they usually have, and of course, Pac-12 is going to be gone as it is. Now, we do have to know that Washington and Oregon, the two remaining Pac teams, has made an agreement with the Mountain West Conference to play them next year, but it will not count in the Mountain West standings. They will not be able to play in the Mountain West Championship game. It basically pads Oregon and Washington, so they can have their so-called
State and Washington State.
Yeah, sort of like an old Big Ten matchup. They it used to be the SEC would play a team that would not be in the SEC and would count in the standings. It used to do it that way a lot. But the days of of where you would know weeks beforehand which bowl you would be playing if you weren't playing the conference championship is gone. Because it used to be where you used to be weeks on hand, that sort of thing. Tennessee in '84 almost got into the Holiday Bowl to play BYU, which was going to win the national championship. But the Holiday Bowl backed that up because they realized Tennessee would beat BYU, and that was probably true. They took Michigan instead, and BYU beat Michigan. Everybody was howling, "It's not fair! They didn't play in the Sugar or the Rose or the Cotton or all that." Well, They were members of the WAC. They were contractually obligated to the Holiday Bowl.
Well, the good news is for all these national championship claims, things like that, Florida State could always claim the national championship, much like UCF claimed that one a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I believe that Alabama's probably got 14 or 15 trophies, but they've claimed like 37. So
you would have believed the number of teams of this. Tennessee has won 7 national championships, claimed. However, they also have unclaimed titles. 1914, they went 9-0. Okay, 1927, when they went 9-1, that was unclaimed trophy. 1939, officially they were not crowned. They were undefeated, unscored upon, yet uncrowned. Texas A&M got that nod. How it is. 1956. They went 10-1 that year. Johnny Majors is their tailback. They could have claimed that. 1965. Okay. 1970, when they went 11-1. 1985, when they went 9-1-2, just Sugar Vols. 1989 when he went 11-1. Those were unclaimed. Obviously, UT does not claim them as national championships. They could be claimed because they were done by other organizations. Dunkel, Lickenhouse, Williamson System. There were a number of those going around. But you know what gets me is that when they came out with the polls in the 1930s, this was just sort of an intellectual exercise. Mm-hmm. You know, the pollsters, which were the newspaper writers, would just basically, well, this is just fun. Let's just have who's going to have the top 20, and they would have a list of top 20 teams they think could. Well, they made the monster. Now they like the monster. He got out of his cage. They can't get it back in. So yes, it is. And then of course came the coaches in 1950, and then of course then came the alliance, and then that didn't work because you had split national titles in '97 between Nebraska and Michigan. They couldn't play each other because of contractuals. You know, the Michigan was in the rose and Nebraska was in the orange, and Nebraska had to be content with beating Tennessee in the Orange Bowl, and Michigan beat Washington State in the Rose Bowl, and it was a split. That's why they had the BCS, and you know what a lot of people said, take out the C and you get the idea.
Yeah.
And there were in 1998, you had a situation where it almost came apart. Remember the last Saturday of the regular season, you had 3 undefeated teams? 4, actually. Tulane was the other one, but Tulane was too far down the polls to do any difference. Kansas State, UCLA, and Tennessee. And people say, well, Kansas State and UCLA will win. Tennessee will be out of the Fiesta Bowl. Because they were saying that. There was some serious talk about that. Tennessee would go up into the Sugar Bowl and would say, hey, you know, they're national championships. What happens? Kansas State loses to Texas A&M by a former Tennessee quarterback, Brandon Stewart. Mm-hmm. He actually did Tennessee a favor by beating Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game, and then UCLA loses to Miami. What happens? Tennessee goes to the Fiesta Bowl, beats a good Florida State team, and wins the national title. And everybody said, "Oh, that's the pick." Yeah. You know, it's like this. You like 2001. Tennessee was all set to go to the Rose Bowl to play Miami. They lose in the Big SEC. Who did they pick to go play Miami in the Rose Bowl? Nebraska, which was not a very good team. You know, they want the marquee names. They want the names. Alabama is the big thing. The Bear, all these national championships. They don't want competency. They want brass. They want glitz. They want glamour.
That's part of the problem with the NCAA right now is, you know, and I know I've harped on the NILs and all that junk, but that's the problem with NCAA is you've got some really good players out there and really good teams out there that are going to get the short end of the stick because of this NIL junk and because of the money and because of the flow of where that money is going. And the bigger schools, I mean, it's just in many ways it seems unfair. Yeah. But you know, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. We have to just do what we can. But I honestly don't believe that it should be a popularity contest. It should be by who is the best team, who is the one, you know, that. And I mean, yes, Georgia lost an SEC championship, but Georgia's also proven that they are one of the marquee teams in the country right now. They lost to Alabama. Okay, that's like, you know,
twice in 30 games.
Yeah, that's losing to what some would say is the cream of the crop in regards to good football teams in the NCAA. So with them being, you know, defending champions, 2-time defending champions, you know, people can make that argument that Georgia shouldn't have dropped as far as they did. You know, I don't know, but it's all about the money, and right now it is almost. It's almost like every conference against the SEC.
Right.
And the heads of those conferences want to do anything they can to get the SEC out of that playoff and out of that championship game. And they tried one year. They put 2 SEC teams, you know, in there, and they ended up playing for the championship, and it drove people nuts. Because what they were trying to do was, you know, we'll put, you know, one of the SEC teams up with what we thought would be the best team in the country. They got beat. SEC won both of those games, and it was just like an SEC show, and it has been for the last several years. But and people hate that. You know, outside of the SEC fans.
You know, what drove me crazy is that I was talking to this Ohio State fan. It was after the '98 season, and he was saying Ohio State was the national champion. And I said, really? I said, really? What bowl did they play in? They didn't play any Fiesta Bowl. They didn't play in the national championship game. There was two teams called Tennessee and Florida State. Where do you get this one? They said, but they're better than Tennessee. Tennessee didn't play anybody. And I said, I picked up like this, like they beat 17th ranked Syracuse on the road. They beat Florida, number 2 in the nation, at home. They beat Georgia, number 7 in the nation. They beat Alabama. They beat number 8 Arkansas at home, getting back on the fumble recovery. Then they beat Mississippi State, and they beat Florida State, the number 2 team in the nation. And that's a nobody. And I said, look, I said, what your problem was is that you have one big problem. You guys lost a game to Michigan State. You lost the game to Michigan State. And he said, which, by the way, the head coach of Michigan State was Nick Saban. I'm surprised, you know, that's that sort of thing. And these people sit here and talk about, you know, their team is better than the other. What they ought to do is have, like, you know, like what they call a playoff division, college playoff division, like, you know, used to call it 1AA.
Yeah.
What they got to do, this is what you ought to do, is take 20 teams, okay, in college football, major college football, and put them in, like the 1AA, in the playoff system. You know, like the NFL does, go through the playoff system. Let them go at each other. The other teams who are left out, send them to bowls. Keep the bowl system. Okay, let them. Okay, you didn't quite make it. Okay, you're still going to get rewarded with a bowl. You would probably have to drop the bowls by about 10 or 15. There's too many bowls now, as is. And you would have those teams go in there, and then in early February, starting in mid-December to early February, have a Super Bowl at the end with the 2 teams. That won't settle the argument entirely, but
they already have a Super Bowl, though.
Well, you know, I always say
they already have a Super Bowl. That's pros.
Yeah, well, that's pros. It's different, but you look at teams like Detroit. Could they actually get into the Super Bowl? That'd be the first for them. Could they get into the Super Bowl?
Possible.
It's possible. But
I'll tell you, the for those of you who are avid college football fans, as I am, and I know you are, the games, the bowls to really watch. And I've just kind of went through this list. I think Virginia Tech and Tulane in the Military Bowl, December 27th, is going to be a pretty good game. I also think that North Carolina, West Virginia will be a good game in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That's also December 27th.
You know that the winning coach gets doused with a bucket full of mayonnaise. It's not something that I would really want to have.
I would not have
I wouldn't want to smell like a bologna sandwich for the next month.
No. Louisville and USC, they play in the Holiday Bowl, also December 27th.
That's a nice bowl.
Then you skip down to the Cotton Bowl. December 29th, Missouri is playing Ohio State.
That's a good matchup.
That's going to be a good matchup.
That's a great matchup.
And of course, you mentioned Auburn and Maryland at the Music City Bowl, the Orange Bowl, Florida State and Georgia. That is going to be an excellent game.
That's going to be. I would be going to be the I would say the Sour Grapes Bowl, if you want to call it that.
Iowa, Tennessee at the Citrus Bowl, January 1st, and of course, then your 2 playoff games, Michigan, Alabama, and Washington and Texas in the Rose and Sugar Bowl, respectively.
I'm surprised they didn't have LSU and Notre Dame match up in the bowl because, Brian Kelly was the coach at Notre Dame.
Well, Notre Dame went to the Sun Bowl. They're playing Oregon State. LSU, they're in the ReliaQuest Bowl, the old Outback Bowl, as you mentioned, against Wisconsin. It could have very well been. I mean, I think it all came down to that. I guess they just didn't want to draw up that bad blood between those 2 teams, because if there's one team that I don't like, it's LSU.
Yeah.
And if it's one team that I know that can play on the dirty side, it's LSU. So I guess Notre Dame was like, no, we'll pass. We'll just go ahead and take our chances with Oregon State and move on.
You know, Jason Reel told me that when he was a grad assistant at Tennessee, he said he went down to play at LSU at Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they call that the world's largest Death Valley, and good reason. They actually called the earthquake game because he actually registered on the seismometers at LSU.
Right.
But he said he went down there, and it's like the LSU fans were just like banging against the bus, and he was like, you know, and they were fearing that they were going to tip that bus over. That's how fanatical there is, and he would also get that tiger, Mike the Tiger, to roar, which is unnerving. To those who did, and you know, there's a story during the 1971 Sugar Bowl where Tennessee was playing Air Force, and Tennessee was way ahead of Air Force in the first quarter. It was 24-0 in the first, and they played at Old Tulane Stadium. They didn't play it in the Superdome until the mid 1970s. They said a dog ran out onto the field, and it stopped the game for 10 minutes. And everybody was trying to catch this dog, and this dog was running around. It would go one place, and the crowd would cheer, "Yay!" You know, and then the dog would reverse direction, and the crowd at the other end would go, "Yay!" You know, that sort of thing. And finally, after 10 minutes, they got that, and Bill Battle said, "Sick Smokey on him, sick Smokey on him," and they sort of keep the fans interested in the game on television. They would put up stats saying Tennessee 250 yards rushing, Air Force 125 yards rushing, dog 640 yards. It was funny. And Battle was afraid it would ruin the momentum that Tennessee had. He really didn't, because Tennessee won easily 34-13. But it was one of the funny things, because I actually seen the video on that. The dog running all over the field. It's Old Tulane Stadium, which is a very windy.
That reminds me, and I don't know if I should share this or not, but I'm going to. Many years ago, I think you were probably, it was before I was doing the radio. You and Mel may have been doing it. You may have been doing it by yourself. I'm not sure. We were at South Pittsburgh one year, and it was South Pittsburgh's homecoming, and it was during their heyday. I mean, of course, they were winning against everybody, and they were beating us like a drum.
Yeah.
And they were coming around the homecoming court. You know, they went around the whole field. They built floats and things like that. It was a big hoopla.
Yeah.
You know, and it was really nice. But as they were coming around, the students were heckling our fans because they were beating us, you know, pretty handily.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing, and you know, karma always seems to come out during the homecoming court when they walked out onto the field. There was like 3 or 4 dogs that ran out on the field in the middle of all this crowd. And, of course, they were doing what dogs do. Yeah. And everybody was just like, "Get those dogs off the field." It really just, disrupted the homecoming festivities.
Yeah.
Bledsoe's side was just dying laughing. It couldn't have happened to anybody else. It had been as funny. But the fact that they were heckling us and then went over there, and it's almost ruined the entire, because I'd say every picture they took, you know, had at least 2 dogs in it at every time they went and run around. But that just tickled me to death, and I think back on that, and just sometimes just chuckle to myself, because that was so funny. I believe I was sitting there with a few of my friends, and I know for a fact 2 of them remember it because we brought it up before.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely, those animals can really get in there. I mean, look at the cat in a baseball game.
Yeah.
You know, they've had to, you know, call a game for a few minutes to get a cat out the field. I mean, so it's interesting, but let them get out there. You know, they'll learn.
They also had South Pittsburgh. They put us right next to a loudspeaker in the field, and you know, they had a guy there he would scream, "Go Pirates!" or something in there, and he would drown us out. And Mel said, "I'm going to get me some of those wire clippers and cut those wires." It's not a great. It ain't a great way to.
Now I don't remember doing that at South Pittsburgh, but I do remember that happening to us at Brainerd. They had the speaker, no lie, where they had us in the press box. The speaker that was outside is supposed to be pointed out toward the stands. It had been turned
to us
and was pointed in toward us, and they were playing music so loud we couldn't even hear each other, and we were literally sitting. You know, I've got a big mouth, and we know Mike's got a big mouth, so we couldn't hear each other. You know, and it was just ridiculous. So I was like, hey, let's just go out here. I'd rather sit in the stands than to be in here and amongst all this.
I couldn't stand it either. They're driving me crazy, and I think it was, and then I didn't say anything. You didn't say anything. You were just sort of moved outside. But the thing about it is that they said I was told that during the '86 Sugar Bowl that the Miami players were while they were weeks up leading up to the game, were trying to pick fights with UT players to try to get them kicked off, because it was either one bad case of insecurity or these people were just as stupid as a brick, and Tennessee ended up whipping him like a redheaded stepchild in that game. That was one of the marvelous games there. But to be honest, right now the bowl season, well, we know that of course teams are going to win close games. They're going to win in blowouts. It's going to be that sort of thing. Some teams don't want to be there, and some teams do want to be there. You're going to have the opt-outs. I think is that if you're on this team, you don't opt out. You should play the game. And I think that's the way it is. And I know they want to get ready for pro football. I understand that. Okay, but a high draft pick. But let's put it right now is that you can break your leg or tear up your knee just as easily in a pro football game than you can in a bowl game. So why not enjoy the experience that you can? Okay, when we come back, we're gonna our final segment. We're gonna talk about some other things of importance: the NBA basketball season, NFL football, just anything basically that comes to mind as you're watching the Sports Scene with Mike and Bradley here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative Channel 18.
At Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter, we're committed to be better. Better prices, better vehicles, a better experience. Your Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter understands that you rely on us to provide you with the highest quality of used vehicles. With over 350 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. So what are you waiting for? Let us show you a better experience with the Jason Lewis Automotive family. Come visit us at Rankin Avenue here in Dunlap or on the web at dunlapsupercenter.com.
Come and see the beautiful Sequatchie Valley. And while you're here, visit the Dunlap Mercantile. We have a full line of hats from Resistol, Stetson, Charlie One Horse, American Hat Makers, GG Pip, Greeley hats from the TV show Yellowstone, and a full line of vintage hats. Make sure to check out our hat bar where we can clean, shape, and customize a hat just for you, right here at the Dunlap Mercantile.
You need a bank that you can depend on. Here at Citizens Tri-County Bank, we have the most dependable staff that you will ever meet. Call in, you will not get an automated attendant, you'll get a person. But on the other side, we have all the technology that anyone would need, from apps to online banking to bill pay. So please come and grow with us as we're about to celebrate our 50th year. We are the only community bank you will ever need.
Okay, we're back. The 4 Heisman Trophy candidates, finalists, have been invited to New York. Unfortunately, there's no Tennessee player on that list. Last year, I thought that Hendon Hooker should have won it. You and I will agree with that. He was ended up being 5th. But anyway, so this will be the 4 finalists. Ohio State's wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., Oregon quarterback Bo Nix, Washington quarterback Mike Penix Jr., and LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels. There's a case to be made for each player. And of course, probably the one I would want to win would be the Washington quarterback, because he got them to an undefeated season. I mean, that's quarterback. The LSU quarterback was good, but I don't think he's good enough because he's lost a couple of games.
Yeah.
So I would say he's probably going to be a big say. Marvin Harrison, his stats are impressive, but still, He lost to Michigan, probably knocked him out of there.
I think it's going to come down between Bo Nix and Penix Jr. in my opinion.
I would say so, because basically those are very good quarterbacks that are out of the Pac-12. It might be a fitting, sayonara to the Pac-12 to have one of them win this thing. Of course, you remember a lot of times there's some guys won it who should have won it and shouldn't have won it, and there's some who should have won it who did not. The most famous case, of course, was the infamous Peyton Manning thing, where Peyton Manning was supposedly the favorite up to the very end. And to be honest, that week I really had a dreaded feeling that he was not going to win that Heisman. And unfortunately, it's sort of thing. And I nearly shot the TV at that point. As
Charles Woodson.
Now, Charles Woodson is a very good player. There's no doubt about it. He was a two-way player, one of the rare breeds.
Well, he's no Peyton Manning.
No, of course not. When he retired the same year as Peyton Manning, nobody cared. Even Woodson said Peyton should have won it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no doubt about it. And Peyton Manning said, I don't know what they were looking for. Because Tennessee's the only college team in the nation that had 0 for 4 in Heisman Trophy finalists. They never won anything. Of course, it was in 1951, Hank Lorisello lost to a Princeton player, and a lot of people said, well, Lorisello was the better player. That was days that when Princeton, the Ivy League, was the big thing still. And then in 1956, Johnny Majors, the tailback, lost to Notre Dame quarterback. And that was the only instance where Notre Dame, a college football player, won the Heisman on a losing team, 2-8 Notre Dame team, Paul Hornick. And there's a story behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And he said many years later, Hornick had a radio show, and he went to the University of Tennessee to do a radio show. And he had, Coach Majors, I'm glad you're here, and I want to ask you, who did you think won the Heisman? Won the Heisman Trophy in 1956? And Hornick was probably figured he's going to trap him. Because they're going to trap him. And Johnny Majors replied, Jim Brown, Syracuse. Jim Brown, the pro player actor. Jim Brown, and someone asked Johnny Majors, he said, how long did you wait for him to ask you that question? He said, 30 years. he said, yeah, and because what it was is Johnny Majors explained this. Notre Dame had the cachet. It had the beauty school image. Tennessee was a Southern school, therefore we're not thing. Then in 1993, Heath Shuler ended up being runner-up to the Florida State quarterback, but the Florida State quarterback was better. So it was deservedly won. Mm-hmm. In the case, nobody really argued for it. Of course, if Shuler had stayed to play his senior season at Tennessee, he probably could have won it.
Probably could have.
But of course, his son Navy Shuler is a quarterback at UT.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's played a little bit. So,
yeah.
But I don't think he's got his father's capabilities. I think he's always going to be a backup. And then, of course, 1997. Peyton Manning was the big, was the front runner all through the season. It was Peyton, everybody Peyton this, Peyton that. And what it was that there was those. Remember that video they had out last year during Halloween where you had everybody was like going to the haunted house and they had this guy saying big Tennessee fans and you had this guy sitting there and said like I'm a Midwestern sports writer right and it's a funny video. It said nobody scares me and they come like Alabama, Georgia. Nah, I ain't scared of that. And then the guy comes up and said I got something to scare you and he starts talking about Charles Woodson and all that, and the guy goes, "No!" It was a funny video, really. It was. I wish we could show it on this show. It would be funny. It'd be funny to watch. It was all meant in good jest. That sort of thing. And of course, Peyton Manning lost to Charles Woodson, and from that day on, I never watched a Heisman Trophy contest. I don't think anybody.
I honestly don't believe that I have either.
I mean, if a Tennessee player isn't it, why watch it? It's sort of like watching paint dry. They would have all these things here. Paul Hornick said he won it because what it was, not in a ceremony in New York, because they called him out of class and told him. That's it. It was not the big thing. It was just a trophy. It was originally called the Downtown Athletic Club, which in New York trophy.
Yeah.
For the best. They really need to have a Heisman Trophy for offensive and defensive players. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Okay, go pro football. Let's talk a little pro football. We know that the season has reached its halfway point in pro football, and there are some teams who are still in contention. Some teams are not going to make it, and there are some teams. Detroit still is in contention, and
Detroit leads the NFC North right now. That's a big surprise. Detroit has been a big surprise this year, and Miami Dolphins have been a big surprise this year. Both teams lead their division right now. One of the biggest disappointments this year, which is usually one of the more competitive divisions, is the NFC South. You got the Falcons, Buccaneers, Saints, and Panthers, and they're arguably the worst division in the entire NFL right now. The Falcons are actually leading the division, but the record is 6-6. So that's just by NFL standards, that's terrible, and I hate to use that word, but 6-6. Yes, they are 500, but most of the time when you are leading a division, you are like the others. The Ravens 9-3, Dolphins 9-3, Eagles 10-2, Lions 9-3, Niners 9-3. The Chiefs are 8-4. But you got a 6-6 first place team.
Yeah.
That's not usually something to brag about.
It used to be. I used to remember in the '70s is that when the Rankin Smith, which owned the team at the time, I'm not sure they still do or not. They say they made bad decisions up on player personnel. For example, they needed a quarterback. What did they do? They drafted a punter, and they had a lot of punters. Like they needed a punter like a hole in the head.
Yeah. And
that tells you how bad it was. Rankin Smith nearly ran that team into the ground. Nobody was really know what they were thinking. They say one thing, they didn't know Bo Diddley about football. So you look at the decisions by owners and coaches and managers and all that. You could get a player and it looks like it's a 100%. Hey, this is a sure shot guy, and he ends up Ryan Leaf.
Yeah.
Remember Ryan Leaf?
I do.
He was between him and Manning, who was going to be 1 and 2, and the Manning finally sort of put the word out they didn't really want to go to San Diego. They wanted to go somewhere else, and the Colts took him as his number 1 overall pick, and they put Ryan Leaf as number 2. And look what happened to him. And he ended up being more trouble than he's worth, and he eventually ended up in a little bit of legal trouble. I saw him a couple of years ago. He actually was doing a Tennessee football game as a color commentator.
Now, was that the first pick that year was San Diego?
Right.
And they picked Eli Manning.
And Eli didn't want to go.
Eli didn't want to go.
Oh.
So they worked out a trade with New York.
New York.
So Manning went to New York. Ryan Leaf goes to San Diego, and it was a complete and utter flop and disaster with him in San Diego. But I am excited to see the Lions do good. They've been down for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're looking at even back to the Barry Sanders days. They were a decent team because of Barry Sanders, but they weren't winning championships and Super Bowls. So to see those teams kind of coming up and doing better. The Dolphins are back doing their thing. And you got the Lions that are coming on strong. The 49ers have come back, and the Eagles obviously are record-wise the best team in the league right now. But you still got the Chiefs to worry about. They always seem to find a way to win. They're 8-4 going into the latter part of the season. But it's going to be interesting how it shakes out. I would like to see the Dolphins and the Lions make a push deep in the playoffs. I really would, because the teams that normally do are not even in contention right now. The Patriots, they're 2-10. They're done.
Yeah.
You've got the Seahawks, they're 6-6. Like the Falcons are. A lot of the teams that normally are competing, Buffalo is 6-6, that are competing for deep into the playoff runs are mediocre right now at best. You've got teams that are usually mediocre that are excelling very well. The Dallas Cowboys are 9-3. That's a big deal for them. they've been struggling for a while, and they're finally, of course, everybody wants to be a Cowboys fan until you have to say you're a Cowboys fan, and nobody hardly wants to do that. But I stopped following the NFL when Peyton Manning retired, because I didn't have any interest in it anymore. And around that same time was when they were making that big hoopla about the Kaepernick and all of that, and I was like, you're there to play football. You can use that platform in a different way. And of course, everybody has opinions on that, but I just don't follow pro football like I used to. But it is good to see that the Dolphins and the Lions coming on.
Absolutely. I used to tell stories about Joe Namath when he played at Alabama. When his knees were good, he was spectacular. He tore up his knee in one game in Alabama, and it really cost him, and a lot of mobility that he had. And they said one time he was getting off a plane for a game, and this is before they had the old ladder stairs that you had to go down on, and he said he literally had to be helped off the plane because his knees were so bad. That's how bad he was. He said he would have been even a greater player had his knees not been so dinged up. They said they say Peyton Manning had to retire because he was so beat up. He had to sit out 1 year because of his neck injury. He had he had to have help pulling up his pants because basically his knees were so bad. Yeah. And that was, he said you can't play pro football beyond 40. It will kill you. It will kill you. Of course, Y.A. Tittle and George Blanda were the notable exceptions, played into their 50s, but you can't play beyond 40. That's used to say you just can't do it anymore. Yeah. And that sort of thing. Same with basketball players. How it is. But NBA basketball players. A lot of them are out by age 40 because they're so beat up.
Right.
And all that.
What's that constant training, constant running and jumping, and of course, football being contact sport. It takes a toll on the body. It really does.
Any sport will do that.
Any sport with constant repetition, as far as the cuts and the jumps, and your joints are going to have a lot of pressure on them anyway. Especially if you're just repetitive movements. It's going to take a toll on your body, and that's why you see what people don't realize. A lot of people don't like them, but I do. I think they're entertaining. The Duck Dynasty boys, and how that Phil Robertson was the starting quarterback over Terry Bradshaw at Louisiana Tech. A lot of people don't know that. And they asked him in an interview. He said, and if you're familiar with Terry Bradshaw, he obviously was a huge player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Won several Super Bowls and MVPs and all of that. And they asked Phil Robertson. They said, "How do you ever look back and regret not going pro in football?" Because he's
good enough for it.
He was QB1. Bradshaw was his backup. Yep. That just tells you how good he was at Louisiana Tech. And he looked at the camera and looked at the interviewer, and he said, "Have you seen Bradshaw?" Yeah. And the shape that he's in physically.
He's not in very good shape.
He said, "No." He said, "I don't regret not going pro at all." And of course, he gave that up to hunt ducks and start a company and start a business. But yeah, it's your body can only take so much, and I'm surprised that some of those guys, I'm surprised Tom Brady lasted as long as he did, honestly, because of the fact that you put yourself out there for so many bad things to happen, and again, just so much pressure on your body, to play and do that same thing over and over and over in preparation, and it's eventually going to give out.
The photo of Y.A. Tittle when he was at Denver, his last thing of him slumped on the ground, blood coming out of his ears. He was in his 50s, and he had to get up. Mary Lou Retton, the famous gymnast, the one who did the perfect 10 at the '84 Olympics, was sick because basically she said her body took a beating from the tumbling, from the gymnastics and such, and she says she went out a lot longer than she should have, and she should have quit while she was ahead, and it ended up costing her years later. But again, like I said, it's a very difficult thing to do. I know what it's like to take a beating. I know what it's like to take a beating. For example, is I got in a car crash, and you bang your head against the steering wheel a couple of dozen times. It's it takes it out of you a little bit, and in a way I'm still paying for it, even though it's like I used to say, it's like going 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. And you're lucky that this sort of thing. I did, it didn't look very good afterwards. But, like I said, physical, your body can take only so much. And then at the end, I know you can't go out and play football today, and you wouldn't want to.
No, my knees would not let me do that. I mean, of course, I'm a bigger guy, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that. I've lost 130 pounds, so I'm on my way to, getting.
And I hope that you do lose all that weight, because I
already have.
You want to live. You want to live a long life.
I want to lose more, and I want to get new knees. But there is no way right now that I could go and strap on the pads and play football with the way my knees and hips are. And
I couldn't do it.
And I look back, at the fact that yes, they are weight-bearing joints, but the thing that I subjected my body to, I wanted to be the strongest player on the team. I didn't care if I played every down. I didn't care if I started. I wanted to be the strongest player on the team. And the people that I played with would tell you that, I could lift a lot of weight when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And that's not me thumping my chest, because right now I'm kicking myself, because it's destroyed my knees, it's destroyed my back, it destroyed my hips. And, now I'm having to pay for it, having to get shots every 3 months to keep myself from having to walk around with a cane or a walker and be in pain and be in tears everywhere I go. But they're getting better. And but yeah, if I had known then what I know now, I would have took it a little easier.
Yeah, would put that's what youth does to you. They say youth is wasted on the young, and of course a couple of guys like us are getting old and start talking about our complaints. So that's just something about luck. But anyway, so Bradley, do you have some final words to say before we go today?
Don't have any final words, but I will encourage you again to go out and watch those Bledsoe County Warriors play basketball. You will not be disappointed. The girls have got a little ways to go to gel together and start competing for their first win of the season. The boys are hitting on all cylinders right now. So get out there and support those guys and girls, and let your voice be heard. Wear your blue. And I always sign off with same thing every time, Mike.
Well, the Braves are not playing this year.
Go Blue, go Braves, and go Big Orange.
Okay, and of course, like I said, Friday night, of course, we'll have the first game of the season on WAT Live, as Bledsoe County will host Marion County in a district matchup. And it'll be at W. Chisholm Gymnasium at Bledsoe County High School. We have the broadcast at 5:50 p.m. pregame, 6 p.m. tip-off. And, of course, we hope that you will attend that game and enforce to show Marion County who are the real Warriors. And so Bledsoe County and Marion County Friday night at Pikeville. Game time again, 6 p.m. tip-off, 5:50 p.m. They also have junior varsity beforehand, so you get to see the younger players get to strut their stuff.
The boys play at 4:30.
At 4:30.
That's what they have listed.
So they'll have that 4:30, and then they'll have then they will, of course, have the primary game with the girls first and then the boys second. So this will do it for us here. We'll be back in 2 weeks for our Christmas special. And we'll hopefully maybe get a few elves in here and give some presents and what we would like to see under our Christmas tree and under your Christmas tree, sports-wise or otherwise, as you're watching the Mike and Bradley Sports Scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative, Channel 18 and WAT AM 110. Good day, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the Christmas special here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative, Channel 18.
Brought to you by Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative in the Sequatchie Valley.